Welcome everybody to the Rico 12 Ask It Basket with Robert Pardon, the recovery guy. I'm here with him from clear across the country. We can't get too much further apart in this nation. I'm up in Spokane, Washington. He's down in Florida. Fort Lauderdale, is that where you're at?
Palm Coast, which is just north of Daytona Beach.
Daytona Beach, okay. Which I don't know what Florida map looks like other than the shape of it and where Miami is basically. But no, that's good. I'm grateful that we're able to continue this conversation and this friendship from clear across the country. This week we are not, or this month we aren't joined by Whitney. It's Robert and I. Whitney was not able to join us, but we are going to dive into these questions that we pull out of, and Robert pulls out of his interactions in rehab facilities, in his day-to-day life in recovery, working with others and thinking. Robert, why don't you tell me just a minute? You were just telling me before we started recording about your lawn mowing routine and what that means to you. Let's start there. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Justin. And I'm so grateful for our friendship and the things that you're doing in recovery and assisting others on a much broader base than me. And so I'm very grateful for our friendship. And I pray for you on a regular basis because I know that you walk in some circles that I don't. And so I know that God provides you extra grace as you seek to help others. What we were talking about before, this property in Florida is about 5 times the amount of grass that I have to mow. And I was telling you about how over the last couple years, the last few years, actually, when I had this other property, about 6 years now, God has used, my higher power has used my opportunity to mow the lawn as the perfect place for a 10th step to occur. So I don't wear headphones. I don't listen to music. I don't listen to anything but God. And it's really been great. And I've mowed the lawn today. And once again, it's about 5 times more than I usually, and it hasn't been mowed in a while. So I've taken some extra time, and God was just really speaking to me in a way that I haven't heard my higher power chat before. Again, it's about 5 times. So my higher power had about 5 times about as much time with me as my higher power normally does. So it was really great just to hear from God as I understand God. And what he wants from me as a more mature, as you know, you were there 39 years as of April 25th. And then God speaks to me in a way he did not speak to me when I was 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. He speaks to me in a deeper sense because I'm responsible for more. Too much is given, more will be required. And God speaks to me in almost I've given you this much. What are you going to do with this? And this is how I want you to present it. So it was really neat mowing my lawn today. I don't look at it as a chore. I look at it as an opportunity for God to speak to me in a way that only one's full attention could require.
I love that. And I think that's an amazing opportunity to take. I've heard people say, and I've done this too also, anytime I drive, I spend that time with God. I don't have, earbuds in, the radio going, whatever. Anytime I like this, mow the lawn, I'm with God. And I think that that's a powerful way to strengthen that connection with God. And I love what you said, hey, God speaks to me differently now than he did a month in, 3 months in, 6 months in, a year in. And what I want to do today, and we've had this conversation a little bit, is talk a little bit about that first 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I'm sober. I don't want to drink necessarily. It's not the craving isn't there. The obsession isn't there, but I'm still not recovered. I may be sober, but maybe I'm not recovered. And there's still some maybe relationship issues. Let's talk a little bit about codependency and what that looks like. Robert, why don't you take a minute and share a little bit what you were talking to me about codependency and some of these realizations you had, and then we'll get into some questions about it.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. As you know, as a person who's recovered and striving to a deeper sense of recovery, it's really tempting to have people, places, and things take the position where God likes to reign, our higher power likes to reign. And so we have to be very careful. And I've seen it countless times, especially in newcomers, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. They become confident in overcoming that behavior or that substance, and now they start putting people's expectations in place of where God likes to reign. And so the spouse, the job, the opportunity, money, career advancement, those types of things begin to take the place of where God likes to reign. And so we seek satisfaction in people, places, and things rather than our higher power. And obviously, because people come and go, but God grows. So as an opportunity would leave us, even though another one would present itself, we're faced with the challenge of something leaving, and a gap, a place that is unoccupied will grow, will gain root in us, and now we think we're not as fulfilled as we used to be. Whereas if that place is God, God grows into a new dimension, a new awareness, a new understanding, whereby we have to replace that person, place, or thing with another person, place, or thing, and that leaves a vacuum. And oftentimes that vacuum, that void, creates a longing for us. So a lot of times you'll see a person even cross addict. So, as many of the listeners know, my story, I spent 6 years in Las Vegas gambling and going to strip clubs and overeating and doing drugs and doing alcohol and all those different things. So getting sober for me was whittling down at those things one at a time. Whereas, and I knew the pitfalls of them. So oftentimes, though, I see a person cross addict because they can't go back to drinking, they can't go back to pornography, they can't go back to gambling. But what if I do this? What if I do that? What if I become dependent and I say, well, at least I'm not drinking, at least I'm not acting out, at least I'm not losing a paycheck, but we're doing other things instead. So we have to be very careful of codependency the longer we're sober, because it's a subtle foe that leads us down a path that isn't always healthy. Does that make sense?
It does, and I've got a couple of thoughts on that, but I want to acknowledge that phrase that you said, people come and go, but God grows, just pops to me. And that maybe you're the one that originated that, but I haven't heard it before. Tell me a little bit more about where that phrase comes from and how what that means to you.
Well, you know what, Justin? I don't know if I've ever said it before, but I've acted it out before. So we're talking about the steps, and the steps are the same universally through every recovery program. So no matter if you're Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Sex Anonymous, it doesn't really matter. Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps are the 12 steps. So we come to step 2, and we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So it's the introduction of the God, the higher power concept. Then we made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him, right? So that understanding grows. So in 6 and 7, I'm entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Who's God to me? And what defects of character do I trust him to remove? And then I'm entirely ready to have, I humbly ask him to remove the shortcomings. So my readiness grows as I trust God, as I deepen that relationship. Then I get to step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve that conscious contact with God as we understand it, praying only for the knowledge of his will. So all of those things is expected to grow. So I don't have the same understanding. I don't have the same level of trust in year 3 as I did in year 30. And so that's the part of recovery that you and I and other people who have recovered continue to grow in. So even though we can claim we are recovered in our area of addiction, we stay recovered by that concept, that awareness, that knowledge of who God is, as that continues to grow throughout our recovery.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Rico 12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform. No, this is, I love this, and thank you for helping develop that a little bit. That's something that I'm going to be chewing on for a little while and developing in my own way, in my own practice. I really appreciate it. And that leads me to something that my wife, Heather, often says. She'll ask, what is at my center? What is at your center? And she'll ask it of me. She'll ask it of, other people. Who or what is at your center? And what she means by that is, my being, whatever it is the circle, and what is right at the center. And if it's not God, if it's something else, I become codependent on that substance, that practice, that person, that whatever, and I'm pushing God out. And I think that's where what we're talking. That's one thing I'm getting out of this anyways, Robert, is what or who is at my center? Talk to me a little bit about what your take is on that image of who's at your center.
That is great. And I'm glad you brought up Heather, because you've been with Heather for many years. And I've been with Laura, May 27th, with 36 years for her and me. And it would be easy for me to go and ask her, what makes you happy? And that's an important question to ask, but who really knows is God, because she's God's kid before she's my wife. And so I go to God and I say, okay, God, how can I be a better husband? What can I do to really reach her in a way that only you would understand? She hasn't even asked, and yet you know what the question is. And I try to approach that in a meeting. So I'm meeting this newcomer who's got like 9 days sober this Thursday, and another friend of mine who's going on 9 months. And I want to know from God who they are, how I can best serve God through serving them. And so God is the source. Even though someone else gets the benefit of that, God is the source of my understanding. As we prayed before this, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. And with all that getting, get understanding. And the understanding comes from a higher level of thinking that transcends, that surpasses who Lord is for me. Because the trap is, and it's a trap, is if I please Laura, she must be happy. She may not be. Maybe I'm giving her what she needs in a way she doesn't need it, or a person, place, or thing. Maybe they're getting the human side of me. What they really need is they need the spiritual side of me. They need God's understanding, not my understanding. They need me to play it out as God would direct. So every night when I go to bed and I do steps 10, 11, and I wake up to 12 and 11 every day, God, how do you want me to be? How can I be the best version of me so I can be the best version of who I need to be for whoever you will put in my life today?
Yeah, this is great. And this goes right into one of these bullet points here. Sometimes I feel that I'm doing all that I think is right to take care of my partner's needs, my wife's needs, her wants, which, by the way, we'll be together 29 years come December. So we're just a few years behind you. So
you're a youngster.
Yeah. But So I'm doing my best to try and say, hey God, what can I do to help serve Heather? How can I serve you through by serving her? And I come up with a thought that I think is good, and I bring it to her, and it does not meet her needs. I feel guilty. I feel shame. I feel like, what's going on? How do I address that without becoming, codependent on the situation and spiraling into negative emotions and eventually maybe even into relapse if it becomes that big a deal?
You know, great approach and great depth of thought with that. Um, if I am pleasing to God, then I'm pleasing to everyone around me. It's like the program of recovery. I tell people all the time through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the forward to the first edition, which says we are 100 men and women who have recovered. To show you how we have recovered is precisely why we wrote this book. We hope this proves so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. So my goal is to mirror the first 100. And on a greater length, my goal is to mirror God. And so if I'm mirroring God and I truly believe this is a direction that my higher power is leading me, and in the beginning, I needed the direction of mentors, and I needed really the hand holding of my sponsor. I really believe in sponsorship, that individual who knows me, that I trust, that I can tell my deepest and darkest secrets to, that spiritual advisor, that spiritual confidant who knows me better than I know myself, and who knows God on an intimate level. So if I'm pleasing God, then I'm probably correct. And if you're arguing, just like getting back to my point, I almost lost where I was. If you don't agree with me, it's not me you're not agreeing with. You're not agreeing with the first 100 because all I'm doing is what they did. And so if I'm following God, if I'm really honest with God and I'm really sincere in my approach to God, your argument's not with me. Your argument is with my higher power. And that's an argument that you're going to have on your own, because I'm fine. Now, it doesn't mean that if you come at me and you say, hey, Robert, I don't like what you did, I go back to my higher power and say, what did I do wrong? How did I not minister to this friend of mine in a way that I want you to correct me. I want you to be, they told me that what I did, what I said wasn't adequate. How can I be more adequate? So I take your response back to God. Or I might ask you to say, well, Justin, obviously I've offended you. How did I offend you? How could I have done that differently? How could I have done that better? And you tell me, well, Robert, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. And I go back to God and I say, okay, God, my message was right. It was the messenger that was wrong. Help me to be a better friend, to translate in a language that Justin understands, how to be best suited for him and that need that you told me to represent. Does that make sense?
It does. And now I'm going to come at you from, I'm going to treat you, I guess, as my therapist, my sponsor. I'm going to treat you as my sponsor right here. Okay, Robert, I'm going to ask you a question as if you're my sponsor. As I have a real problem with the message coming across. The words are correct, but the messenger says them in a really poor manner, and it hurts feelings. And that's something that I really struggle with all the time. I don't know if it's my my voice for radio, because it's definitely not my physical stature, but something about me is intimidating to some people, and how it comes out, not what comes out, but how it comes out seems to hurt people. What advice do you have for me? What's your experience, strength, and hope on that for me?
If it's down to the individual, I would ask them, how can I better deliver that message? Obviously, we have a relationship. How can I best deliver Now, I have limitations because I'm only responsible for delivering a message. I'm not responsible for receiving the message. And so I'll get a person's feedback. And it's one of the reasons we have so many different podcasters out there. And I'm glad we do, because not every listener is the right choice of audience. I had a wonderful psychologist when I was back in college named Dr. Nessman. And Dr. Nessman was a clinical psychologist in Redlands, California. And he told me about the rule of thirds. And you and I probably discussed it. I discussed it with everyone at one level or another of our relationship. And the rule of thirds is a third of the people are going to think you hung the moon. A third of the people, they could care what you're saying or what you're not saying. And a third of the people can't wait for you to shut up. But we don't know who those people are. So if we just take our message as sincerely as possible, we know that a third of the people just are going to think I'm an idiot. No matter what I say, no matter how I say it, it just doesn't resonate with them. The message might be right, but how that message is delivered. And we try to be all things to all people, that the Apostle Paul, whether you believe in the Bible or not, is incidental to this quote. The Apostle Paul is recorded as saying, I'm all things to all people, that some may be saved. Doesn't say I'm all things to all people, that all people may be saved. I'm all things to all people, that some may be saved. Just like step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics, to sex addicts, to whatever, and to practice these principles. So I'm responsible for acknowledging God's presence. I'm responsible for trying. Means that implication is I'm not always successful, but I'm trying. I'm doing the best I can. And then what do? I practice the principles in all my affairs. So I go back to God and I say, okay, God, refine me, shape me, mold me, do whatever you have to do, because I want to be as effective as I possibly can, because I know I'm dealing with your children. And as long as I approach that opportunity, that responsibility in that way, I might be wrong, but at least I was attempting to be right.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that's very helpful. Very helpful for me. Yes, thank you. And I think, well, if it's helpful for me, it's going to be helpful for rule of thirds, at least a third of the people out there. So
that's what, you know what? I'll tell you, Justin, Dr. Nessman taught me that when I was about 7 years sober. And it still resonates. It's still, when I go to speak that night that you and I met, there was 100, 150 people in the room. And I knew that out of those 150 people, 50 were going to hear me. 50 really thought I was fantastic. But everyone smiles and looks the same. I don't know who those 50 are. I used to get frustrated as a national speaker, as someone who travels and speaks. I would want everyone to catch my message with a sense of urgency, because I know if they don't, they're going to die. They're going to lose more than God wants them to lose or intended for them to lose. So I need you to fix it. I need you to hear this. I need you to hear that. And there was no continuity. There was no smoothness in my delivery, because I was trying to be all things to all people, that all would change. And they're not going to. I was on the phone with my friend Billy today. Billy's got over 40 years sobriety. And Billy has this friend who continues to be 30. He's probably got more 30 and 60, 90-day chips, 30, 60, 90 than anyone on the planet. And the guy is likely going to die from his area of addiction. And he will die alone. And Billy was just sort of lost. And I said, Billy, maybe this guy is just a statistic, and we know that. We know, however, we try to wrestle, we try to find that magic phrase and the magic way that they will find the magic that we found, right? And by the way, congratulations. When I said you were young, you're very young to have 29 years of marriage to one person. So congratulations on 29 years with Heather. That's quite the milestone and quite the testimony.
Well, thank you very much. And it's quite the testimony that she stuck with me for that long. So
that happens when we marry up.
Yes. Yes. You're talking about, and I think this fits in right away. This is another characteristic, I guess, of a codependent situation, person, place, whatever it may be. When you're speaking and you want everybody to hear, you're trying to be all things to all people so that all may be saved. That's kind of a controlling behavior. I want to control how you feel. Talk to me a little bit about controlling behavior and how that fits into this.
The sooner I realize the only behavior I can control is me, is my behavior. It's not what they say. It's not what they do. It's how I react. It's one of the things that they tried to drill into me in Las Vegas, where I got sober back in 1986. It's not what they say. It's not what they do. It's how I react. The one thing I can control is my response or my action that produces a response. I can't control I can control in a way how you receive it, how you perceive it, how you act upon it. But there comes a point, and that's just a refining, that's just the refiner's fire that we just chisel, to become the best vessel that we can possibly be. And sometimes it's more satiable, it's more appetizing than it is in others. But the bottom line is I can only control how I act or how I react. Everything else is up to you. So that level of codependency, Laura is, as Heather is to me, and she needs to own that. I can only control how I am. I can't control how she receives. I can only control, and that's again why we once we progress in the steps, and we're doing steps 10, 11, and 12, the step 10 says continue to take personal inventory. And when, not if, when we are wrong, we promptly admit it. What did we admit? Well, we admit that I was wrong in a particular way. And then that leads us into step 11, where we're asking for the change to occur. So I'm always evolving. I'm always trying to be the best version of me that I possibly can be, in hopes that you see that I really do care about what you think, about what you perceive in me. And so I can't control you. I can control me in how I interact with you.
Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform. I'm going to bring a little bit more of my own personal recovery story into this, and I typically leave that for times when I'm speaking or something like that. But I've listened to Heather tell our story a few times, and our story is she found out about my pornography use that I had been hiding for a long time. And when she first found out, she went into this controlling behavior because she said, "I want to protect you." So she'd go in and she'd take keyboard and the mouse and whatever else out of the house anytime she left, so that there was nothing I could do. And then she came into the rooms of recovery and realized I can't control him. And all this stuff
That's
that I'm
good.
doing isn't helpful. So tell me a little bit about why that's good. Talk me through that.
Well, obviously, Heather cared tremendously. She understood the implication of you getting well, and she wanted to remove obstacles. In the same way, very similarly, even though when Laura and I met, Laura, I met her in a bar I was managing. I used to manage Black Angus restaurants in California. And even though I was 2.5 years sober and I was going to meetings on a regular, and I happened to meet Laura in one of my lounges, and we started dating. And I told her, I said, you can drink, you can do whatever you want to do. It's not going to affect me, because obviously I serve people drinks for a living. And I got sober in Las Vegas. I was a room service waiter and all that history. I've always been around alcohol or drugs, people who live the life that I've chosen not to live. And yet she chose for the first few years not to drink at all, because she didn't want to have an environment that could be a trigger for me, until she really became confident that I wasn't going to relapse. She removed obstacles and triggers for me that she thought would stand in the way of me and my recovery. And so she tried to keep the playing field as temptation free as possible, until she realized, well, she has to live her life. She needs to just let me worry about mine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that awakening is really powerful for a spouse, but what is the line between, I'm going to lay off controlling behavior, controlling my loved one's behavior or the behavior of those around me, versus enabling their poor choices and behavior? Where's the line there?
Good question. Because I think wow, that is really good. So two things. Laura, in a way, doesn't control my behavior. She helps me define and refine my behavior. So she, through verbal and nonverbal communication, lets me know how happy she is, right? And people, places, and things. If I'm paying attention to your response to me, I can get an idea if I'm pleasing to you, or if I'm meeting your need, whatever that need may be. Where in some, again, it's verbal and nonverbal. I need to pay attention, but the enabling part comes from trust. Comes from them trusting, in this case, Heather trusting you in your relationship with your higher power to reveal to you the things that she wants to reveal. Because if she does them, she can become your higher power. She is enabling you in areas that only God can able you to be the person that she needs you to be, or the person needs you to be in that circumstance. So as they get to know us, they say, you know what, I don't have to enable, I don't have to make a way for this situation to occur, because I trust Robert's relationship with God enough that God is going to reveal this to him in a way that is going to be more strong, more long lasting than it would be if I set up this scenario. So there are two aspects to that. That person, place, or thing will let me know if I'm pleasing, if I need to make adjustments, and then they'll trust a great adjuster to go ahead and make them in a way that's more sustainable over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And our story, Heather's and mine, is that she was in the the Anon rooms for 7 or 8 years before I ever was willing to step into the 12-step rooms, you know. And the first couple of years was, hey, Justin, you really need to go into these rooms. And I was like, I am not one of those people, you know? And after the first couple of years, she realized this thing I can't control, I can't change. I can't change him. I can't make him do anything. Now she could have said, "Hey, I'm done. I'm out of here. You're I don't want you in my life or in the life of our children." But she felt that God was saying, "Hey, no, stick around. Stick around. Just be patient. Something good's going to happen."
Best is yet to come.
Yeah. And that's not everybody's that's not the right choice for everybody. But I'm grateful it was the right choice for us because she eventually was just praying, "Hey, God, have Justin find his rock bottom. Let him find his rock bottom." And because she didn't want to push the rock bottom on me. She didn't want to enable my poor choices. But, you know, she just was like, "Hey, find that rock bottom so that you can change." And I think that's healthy. I mean, it's worked out well for us. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody else to wait for 7 or 8 years before going into the rooms, but it worked out for us. Any thoughts or feedback on that?
Yeah, you know, gosh, you bring up something so important. Now, Laura has worked on her wellness, her personal power, because she believes in her own personal power. And I've always told her, I won't be here forever, right? You never know. You know, we're a phone call away from our apple cart being turned upside down, right? Fortunately, I'm 71, you know, we've lived, you know, over almost 37 years together, which is a lifetime. So, but I've always set her up to what if you don't have me? What if you have to become your own person without me being a part of your life? And that's my responsibility to our covenant to enable her, to help her get the tools that she needs to be the best version of her that she can be, just like it's her responsibility and accountability to help me see things that I'm not willing to see. And so, but then again, Laura found me 2.5 years into recovery. I was already on a recovery path. It's very different for you and Heather, who were together through your addiction, through her need to get well. I was already on my path to wellness and already secured in never drinking again by the time Laura met me. And I often say, this is the long answer, I often tell people I meet in recovery, let me speak to your significant other because they need to be on a path to wellness. Somebody, at some point, you need to be going in the same direction at the same time if this is ever going to work for you. And so whether Heather got to the rooms before you and you subsequently followed because you saw, a part of you wanted to be well for you, but you wanted to be well for Heather because you saw Heather growing and all of a sudden she wasn't talking to you about the same things. She wasn't insisting that you become someone because she was becoming someone. And so you thought, wow, I need to go in that direction. And maybe if I apply some of the things that I see in her, maybe we can become everything that I've always wanted us to become. So you decided to set on a path of recovery, the journey of wellness for you, because what you saw in her. And Laura, does that help? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. And this proud SOB would have never said that out loud, but as she was growing those 7 or 8 years, I was admiring what was happening. I was like, there is something happening here. There is a light. There is just a connection there that I want. I want what she has. So that's the attraction, not promotion, right?
Yeah. And I think that is so healthy. And once again, I tell this to people when I have an opportunity to meet spouses, significant others in the same room as the person seeking treatment, I challenge them, are you seeking treatment? Because you have to know how sick you are to stay with the person who acts out as this person has acted out. If you stay without getting well, there's going to come a point where this person is getting well, and you're going to want to make them unwell to satisfy the fact that you're still sick.
Hey, Rico 12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Rico 12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at rico12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Rico 12 Spearhead. Yeah, and that's sick is what that is, right?
Is.
Yeah. Man, good stuff. So, one thing that I often ask my sponsees or others who reach out to me to talk recovery when they're early in their recovery, or more often if they say, you know what, my wife threatened to leave me, she's threatening divorce. And I'll often ask them, okay, so if that happens, are you still all in with your own recovery? Are you still all in with this? Or is your wife at your center? And if that center leaves, are you just going to crumble? And that's more codependent behavior. What's your experience with that?
I think coercion, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about coercion, whether it's a judge, whether it's a spouse, whether it's the significant other, whether it's the parent, matter where we're at in that season of life, who holds the most power over us. That is okay in the beginning, but that's an outside-in approach to recovery. And all of us get to recovery because of some level of coercion, the outside in. At some point, we need to become inside out. So that significant other, in this case, the spouse, could say, if you don't do this, if you don't stop that, I'm going to leave. That's a good reason to stop doing this or acting out to that. And I don't begrudge anyone for doing that, because we all get to recovery for the same reason. We're tired of losing, and you didn't want to lose Heather, and I didn't want to lose. I wanted to gain I was telling a person today that I'll never forget what my dad did. My dad dropped me off at the motel, at the Rhett Butler Motel, on April 19th of 1986. And he said to me, your mother and I aren't going to watch you die. It was relapse time. And I'd gone out and I drank, and my dad found out, and I couldn't stay at his place. And so he said, your mother and I aren't going to watch you die. In 9 months, I would have them over for dinner on Christmas. And my dad said to me, your mother and I aren't going to, we used to worry about you, but now we don't worry anymore. And so within that 9-month window, my dad saw death, that I was going to die, and I did not want to die, and I did not want to disappoint my father. Was a great catalyst for me. But at some point, he saw the change in me that inspired him to say, your mother and I used to worry about you, but we don't worry anymore. He saw something transform in me, not outside of me, but in me, that made him say, you know what? You used to be hopeless, but now I see the hope in you. So at some point, Justin, the reason that we live or are transformed needs to go from that person, place, or thing that got us to, that was that wake-up call for you and me, that said, I'm not going to lose Heather. I'm not going to lose Laura. I'm not going to lose my dad. I'm not going to lose this job. I'm tired of losing. So I'm going to do whatever that person says that I need to do. But at some point, it needs to be because of who I am. And only when it becomes who I am or who I want to be from the inside out, that person sees that trust comes back and they say, you know what? You're not the same cat that you used to be. I like what's happening in you because I can see the result outside of you.
You know, Robert, that is so powerful. And that transformation took 9 months or less for you from the exterior forces that said, well, rock bottom, you're going to die or you're going to recover. And that motivation, the drive, the light coming from inside. So often I see people in the rooms for years and they never get that light. Every once in a while you'll see a flicker and then it goes out. What's the secret sauce there to get that light burning?
You know, it's being sick and tired of just being sick and tired. You know, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the basic text for NA and the essay book, it's pretty universal. We come to a point in our sobriety that we can't imagine our life with, and we can't imagine our life without. And it says we reach a jumping off place. It says that there comes a time, and I know you're a student of the big book as well as SA, and there comes a time where no human power, that change must come from God, and if it doesn't, we're sunk. So a person either resigns themselves to be stupid, boring, and glum, or they get well, or they go back and they act out and they burn their life to the ground one more time. There comes a point in everyone's recovery that we're faced. What am I going to do? Am I going to go to the next level that God, my higher power, is providing for me? Or am I going to relapse? Because at some point, Justin, the pain of not being inside out becomes too much and we need relief. Sometimes that pain is sudden and it becomes very acute where we need relief right now, or it becomes chronic and it lasts over time. But that time will come in everyone's life, where we decide that person, place, or thing is not enough. I need something inside of me to make the outside of me stay well.
And Robert, so I look at myself and I can see from the proof that's in the pudding that change has happened. I can see it in the fruits, but I still look at myself. I still, like, if I look inside, there are times I still feel dark. I still feel unfulfilled. I don't feel it, but I know it is. And it's not just because I'm checking boxes. It's because I've changed. Explain that to me. I'm really honestly puzzled right now as I think of that, because it's so strange, such a strange thing.
I'll tell you, we are at such an advantage because we have a life partner that really observes us in ways that we don't even know they observe us. So you know what I do, Justin? I stay accountable. I still have a sponsor. Will, happy, grateful, recovered alcoholic, has been sober over 45 years. And I stay accountable to him on a regular. I stay accountable to my sponsees. I stay accountable to Laura. She's my greatest advocate because she, more than anyone else, has an interest in me becoming well. So I will go and ask Laura, how am I doing, babe? How are things? Am I the person that you want me to be? Right now I'm working on not being as angry, not being as considerate and patient with others as I know I want to be and as I could be. So I go to Lauren and say, how am I doing in this area, babe? I know no one wants this from me more than you do because it affects us, but you see how it affects me. You see how I want to be. You see how I desire, how it grieves me so much when I get angry too quickly, when I don't chew on things as long as I should to have the response that I should. And people who really know that I listen will tell me things that I may or may not want to hear. And so I don't become, and this is a trap of a person such as you and me who have been around recovery a long time to think, oh, we know it. We know this, we know that. But the ego, and it's what stops me. That's why pride goes before destruction. It doesn't go before a fall. A haughty spirit goes before a fall. Pride goes before destruction. And the ego is the source of that pride and that haughty spirit. And the ego's one purpose in life is to convince me it doesn't exist. Convince me. So I go to someone who really is watching me, who's got the greatest investment in me getting well. And I go to them and say, how am I doing? I know I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do, how's this working out? Do you see a change in me? Do I need to go back to the drawing board? Is there a chink in my armor that I'm unwilling to see that you think I should take a look at to become a better version of me? Because no one wants me to be more well than you do. And I leave it up to them. And I ask for their opinion, but I'm really asking for their advice. Because, and there's a big difference between the two. If I'm asking for an opinion, I'm just trying to find someone who agrees with me. If I'm asking for their advice, I'm become responsible to change regardless of what they say.
No, this is so good, and I kind of used it as a personal therapy appointment here, and I appreciate that. But no, this has been very helpful for me, Robert. Do you have any final, words of wisdom, thoughts about these topics that we've discussed over the last nearly hour that you'd like to voice before we close this down?
Justin, gosh, our time goes so quickly together. I'm
does.
so for you and this opportunity to share. Our greatest friend is time. If you told me that I had to be done while I was, and I only had till I was 50, and what I gained at 50 years old, it would have to last me the rest of my life. Your listeners can't see it, but I have a lot of tattoos, and one of my tattoo is a lion because of the resilience and the courage that it takes to be a real lion. And one day I was on the phone, Justin, and I spoke with someone whose name was Sundiata, and that's West African, and Sundiata translates to hungering lion. And this person went on to tell me that their grandmother was an African goddess who the legend of the Lion King came from. And I used to think I was a hungry lion. The connotation is very different when you go from a hungry lion to a hungering lion. In other words, my thirst, my desire, my appetite is never satisfied. If I'm a hungry lion and you feed me, I've been fed, and I have a tendency to rest under a tree, and I think my job is done. As a hungering lion, which Sundiata means, hungering lion, my appetite is never satisfied. So every day I'm asking God for more. My middle name is more. I never want to be done. I never want to be finished. At some day, I'm going to take my last breath, and I will be done in this earth suit, and I'll live eternity under my belief structure. I will live eternity with God as I understood God. In the meantime, I want every day to be an opportunity. So if you're new or relatively new out there, give yourself time. We're going to make mistakes along the way. It's just inevitable. We're human and we're frail. That's why we need a power greater than ourselves. And over time, we never stop changing. Sir Isaac Newton said, things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. Things that are at rest tend to stay at rest. So I always want to be in motion. I always want to be moving forward, knowing I'm going to make a mistake along the way. And hopefully that mistake doesn't translate to a relapse. But I stay accountable to others, and I recognize time is things that keep me in motion. And I'm always learning. Winston Churchill said, everyone wants to learn, but no one wants to be taught. And the greatest spiritual advisor I've ever had has not been a part of this program, but he was always say, are you teachable? Are you willing to learn? If you're willing to learn, I'm willing to teach. And that is something that has kept me in motion for over 39 years. And Justin, I just can't say enough about the element of time. Give yourself time to grow into who you will be. And it doesn't mean that I'm not happy with who I am, but I'm going to be more happy with who I can be rather than who I am. I'm satisfied with who I am. I'm excited about who I can be.
Love that. And that concept of hungering versus hungry was powerful. And I think that's where I'm going to close this off. People out there listening, no matter how long you've been in the rooms, whether it's one day, whether it's 39 years, whether it's, longer than that, continue hungering, seeking to what the next thing is that levels you up to the next place that God has for you on that path. Keep coming back. I mean, it's a way of life. It's an amazing and adventurous road of happy destiny.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Robert. We'll talk to you again soon. Everybody keep coming back. It works when I work it, so work it. You are worth it.